We'll start with Chief Jenkins. Mr. Mayor, thank you, and council, thank you for having me this evening. I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Paul Petrowski, one of our newest members of the police department. Paul, would you like to say anything to the council? No, looking forward to serving the people of Scottsville. Clear. Thank you very much. I appreciate you stopping there, Paul. Yes, sir. Thank you. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to. Remember, if you need anything from anybody around the city, we'll take care of it. Thank you, Paul. It was right up the way where I was. Maybe 5 minutes from. That's a lot of we've got police officers on that little stretch road. Is that what we need to do? Council, I just wanted to, any questions about the new officer before getting on? Just so you all know, it's from New York. When it's been removed down here. Got 3 kids, 3 boys and a girl, I believe. So, I know it's a blended family, so we've got a big family, but he's excited. We're slowly getting him all of this gear. And for the police department, he's been released on his own, so he's by himself on the street. A couple of the significant calls for service. I'm sure council has had an opportunity to review. We responded over to a large food line. Management had reported that there were some bundles of firewood and some mulch that had been stolen. Officer Wood recognized the suspect, was able to interview him, found the evidence at his home, and was able to charge him with larceny. We also responded to one of our businesses here at Subway for a debit card that had been stolen. Debit card had been used at a couple of locations in the town and one outside of the town. We went to one of the businesses that we knew had video, identified the suspect who worked where the card was stolen. So he's been charged with fraud and some misdemeanor larceny. We also responded over to the Scottsville Elementary School for a report of a person being on the grounds with a gun. We met with staff and the principal, did an extensive search of the exterior of the school. We're not sure if it was actually a person with a gun on the property. It was turkey season. It could have been a person turkey hunting in the woods back behind the school. Kids were saying it might have been a deer, might have been a kid, it might have been a man with a gun, might have been a man with a stick. So we checked it and we weren't able to find any person with a gun at the school. A couple of our community events that we attended this past month, Officer Petrowski and I did spend a lot of time on our walkabouts throughout the town, introducing him to a number of our business owners and community members. Stopped over at the Boys and Girls Club. You can see our auxiliary officers donated about 64 hours of their time this past month. Department news, I've already introduced Paul to council. Also wanted to let council know that we officially started our assistance up at the CPAC and CRC. What we'll do is, like we had discussed, I still yet to sign an MOU, but Officer Wood was the first officer that spent the overlap shift up there at CRC. And he said it went very well. We'll do that 2 days a month on our overlap days. So it's not like there won't be an officer in the town. We'll have one stationed up there at the CRC working a 10-hour shift. We'll have an officer down here in the town doing their patrols as well. We'll also, the town will give a reimbursement back when we paying for the officer time that's actually spent up there. He's $55 an hour all the time, and they should reimburse the town each quarter for that time that we spend up there. So
let me ask you this. when they're spending time there, those 2 days a month, that's time that they're scheduled here in Scottsville, or is that conditional?
It's time they are scheduled.
Is that it's already actually making a little bit of money off of that?
Well, the town will be reimbursed for that. One of the things that Javier and I have talked about is on, so I'm very thrilled that we're able to get in at the ground level on this opportunity. So we can have a seat at the table. CTAC is actually going to go to a 24/7 operation eventually. In Scottsville now is one of 2 departments, so it's Albemarle PD and Region 10, and they've invited Scottsville Police Department to join the CTAC as well. So we'll have that opportunity to have a voice and moving forward in the CTAC. So it's going to be a regional program eventually, but to be able to join the CTAC, you have to be able to commit either funding or resources to be able to help staff it or funding. We were in a position where we had the overlap days, 4 days a month, so just felt that we could utilize 2 of those days manning CTAC, providing them the resource, and we can benefit as well. Our officers, plus other officers back on the street, should be having a situation instead of being tied up most of the time.
Is that at the building on?
It's at the building on Old Lynchburg Road, so they moved from up there a number of years ago, so they're out on Old Lynchburg Road off of 5th Street, just inside the county is where it is. Almost across from the county police department. So that was good news, I thought. So I did realize that there's an E on the number 2. Didn't know how they spelled it, couldn't find it, but I see the sign down there on the window now. They actually, the 2 owners gave me a tour of the facility, and we had talked about what their business model is going to be, and they also asked about these pop-ups on Friday and Saturday nights. I mentioned it at our last work session meeting or our budget work session, and I have had an opportunity to talk with the sheriff over at Nelson County, and they haven't had any problems or issues over in Nelson County. So it's all the owner hall today. I think the other business partners are going to be here on Wednesday, so they want me to stop by Wednesday in the afternoon, and I'll meet both of them.
That's good. It's good that they're reaching out. I think that's,
Seems like they're nice people.
yeah.
Also, one last thing is I wanted to discuss with council, how we have now had an opportunity to look at our town's personnel leave accrual policies or I'm assuming they're policies, right?
Yeah.
Ordinances, not ordinances, but they would be policy. And we couldn't find anything in the manual on our not being able to afford Officer Petrowski 40 hours annually. He comes from Albemarle, had annual time, but they paid him out when he left. So felt that I would like to be able to give him 40 hours annual leave so he could take a vacation if he wanted some time off this summer. But I didn't just want to arbitrarily do that without council's thought.
Is he on full time?
You can Brad.
Does Brad have annual leave?
See, they get 8 hours every month of annual leave and sick leave. But he started with us at 0. So since we're in the middle of summer, just thought maybe the man might want to take a little bit of time during the summer months to spend time on vacation.
Javier and I kicked around some thoughts on that this afternoon. We're gonna put something down on paper.
Would I put something?
We were really gonna put something down on paper and see how, and just as a preliminary, this might work type of thing. And then we'll have that ready for the next work session. We'll get you involved in it too. Okay. So, going back to our work history in other places, how they handle things like that.
Okay.
So we started talking about it today.
So stand by until next work session.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. If we all agree.
Well, we'll be past the budget stuff and we can devote some time to that.
Okay. And then, everyone saw the calls for service for the month? Any questions on the calls for service?
I have a question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
It says that you, just real roughly, you had 438 calls covered by the Scottsville Police Department in town. And then out of town, you had 294 calls, okay?
Correct.
And percentage wise, what that looks, it looks like, I don't want to trust my math here off the top of my head. 70% of your calls are in town and approximately 30% are outside, or have I got messed up in my math?
I think it all depends on the month.
Uh-huh.
You know, if the county needs our assistance in Southern Alabama.
Yeah, you go. But what I was getting at is, it seems to me that a goodly percentage of your work is performing a vital backup and first on the scene calls for Albemarle County. And given that they're geographically challenged by getting to Scottsville, given their service, that's a really valuable service we give.
We don't necessarily add Albemarle's calls, our town calls. We track them
Right,
because we're doing the job.
right.
But what you see is, ACPD is handling of the total calls for service in the town of Scottsville. That's why I have it broken out.
Right, I saw
They're handling 6.21% of the calls in the town.
that. So is it correct to say that we're really giving them well, we're doing a big service, which we should do, but we're giving them a substantial benefit by our men being on call in the county and surrounding county at any time, a fair amount.
I think it's a give and take with both agencies.
I was just working on it because the county, that's an item that you could point out to the county if you documented it and say, look, you know, you're not paying us for this. We're getting your services too, but this is a real benefit, real dollar service that you're getting from it.
I think when, Big Bowling, I think when you factor in the time we spend at the firing range, they have provided us the conditions. We don't have to do that. They will train our officers, qualify our officers. They pay their service division staff, manage all of our reports, enter all of our reports and summonses and everything into the database for Albemarle County and the region. They don't charge us a penny.
I got you. No, I wasn't thinking about charging them.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Because from time to time, the county comes to us and say, you know, they want to contribute money, and then they say, well, we give you too much, and this is something you can point out, but you don't delve into it too deep, and it looks like really is a service the town's providing.
I think it's an absolute service that our officers provide to Southern Alabama, but I also know that they provide our department and our.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked the question, because that's, I'm sure they'll point that out.
They would. I know I would.
And we wouldn't want to disturb. That's a real benefit.
We have such a good working relationship with Albemarle PD. If I need anything like weapons, equipment from Paul, I made one phone call to the deputy chief up there and said, hey, I said, yeah, no problem. You hold on to it. When you can phase your gear in, just bring us back.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just been that type of a relationship.
Oh, I understand. I was just, you know, from time to time, we find it necessary to go to the county kind of half hand. If I could use that term, that doesn't happen very often, but it happens. And this may be something that you want to put in your back pocket and remember at that particular time.
I think the police department up there, Keith, is very aware of what they provide to the town. Much like we are very aware of what we provide to the county. And from my assessment, what the county and Scottsville, that partnership is back and forth. I will tell you, if my staff's in court, county gets a call to come down here and what's going on because I have limited resources. So I see it nothing but a benefit.
Oh, I do too. Don't be getting me wrong. I just, in the back of my head, I've always got how much these generators cost down there in the flood control portion of the town.
I think there's a lot of, how do I want to say this? There are a lot of not recognized expenses in the police world that we don't necessarily see on a daily basis, that I have the opportunity to see behind the scenes. And what it would cost us a small fortune, you know, what they help provide us.
Is it safe to say that, with your mutual aid agreement, that, the amount of time that they spend covering the area where we have, vacancies at a certain time of the day during the week, I would suspect that they probably, whether they have a call or not, put in enough hours to say we covered the area X amount of hours to warrant us having to hire another police officer.
They can do that.
I'm like, let me just, for example, a third shift calls. We sometimes we have one, sometimes we don't. So it varies. So, it's pretty close, I think. That's good to know. And thanks for enlightening me.
I think that Southern Alabama, it's so vast. And there's one of their officers that cover almost 212 square miles. And I know that's because I was the district commander once before up there. It's 212 square miles with one officer.
You can't do it.
It's very difficult. And the relationship that the town of Scottsville has with Albemarle, Southern Albemarle gets covered pretty good. And I know it's a lot of calls for service, and it's recognized by ACPD as well. But when that, I'm sure many of you all heard last month when the man drove his truck into that trailer. I was actually coming from the range, was dispatched and the first officer there. So they had a lot of resources trying to find this guy, very dangerous man. And they had no one covering this 5 and 6. So I pulled my officers from the range. We covered 5 and 6, and I covered the town until they could get their resources through, apprehended the person. The chief called me up there and just thanked me to no end on the help that we provided to their officers. So I think we have a very good relationship, and it's back and forth. It's give and take for sure.
You don't go down, so they don't know.
No. Now, if it would be an all hands and they absolutely need it, we're sure we can do what we have to do. That's what the MOU is for. But we typically are down here just in the southern portions of Alabama. Try to stay within reason by providing the assistance when we need it as well.
What side is that? Like, community medicine.
Yeah, so sector 6, I think, gosh, goes from Piedmont down to Red Hill and east and west. And then sector 5 goes from Red Hill south to Howardsville and everything east and west. 212 square miles for sure. Good question, Jim. Thank you for asking it.
Thank you for such a good answer too.
Yes, sir. Any other questions on stats or anything? Okay, Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything else unless there's any questions.
Any other questions for the chief? Appreciate all you do.
Yes, sir.
If I see a fire chief in the house, so we'll skip on to the Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Walker is here, so the chamber, and we'd like to come up here somewhere.
Yep.
Where we can be seen and heard.
This is our work around the tank. We just had our monthly meeting last week, and few events that happened since our prior meeting, so we reviewed them. Everything went well, not perfect but well. Just this past week after the meeting, we had our couple different things. We had a fundraising event for Boys and Girls Club, raised $200 for that. We had a plant sale prior to that, raised $200 for that for the chamber. I think it was this Saturday raising money for the Boys and Girls Club was a good example of what the chamber can do for other organizations in the town. Just a $200, but a donation is a donation. We have a Hardware Hill, which is a winery, they're not allowed to donate to an organization like Boys and Girls Club. Alcohol, kids and all that. But they're a member of the chamber. We set up our chamber table at the Harbor Hills, event that they had on Saturday and had a raffle there at that event. And, with the understanding that all the people can go to Boys and Girls Club. So it's a good way to, work around and still help people that want to do good, not be bound by, red tape. So, wanted to at least put that out there. We also talked about the chamber in the, spirit of bringing the town a little bit more together and know what's going on, joining with, SCAN and being a board member there. SCAN's got a lot going on right now, and ultimately we decided that's something that we would be willing to do, but we're gonna hold off for this particular meeting that we had this past week. So we'll continue to revisit that. I understand there's an events committee meeting, Wednesday this week.
Wednesday or Tuesday?
We should double check our schedule.
Okay. I was, under the impression that it was Wednesday at 2, so I do have that on kind of the Tuesday night. But, got a couple events coming up, Pollinator Festival, Bathtub Festival, and I'm working with the town on. We have the, Buckingham Chamber and Scottsville Chamber joint, mixer, if you will, at, Muddy Falls Winery down in Buckingham. Just, not quite 10 minutes from you. And, we're gonna do that on Thursday of this week. And then, Friday, we have the grand opening at the Tiger Jewel. So that ought to be a ribbon cutting, big ordeal. I seen the one that they did down in Dillon, when they opened that one, there was radio involved. And I don't know what all they have planned, but the chamber will be there, so, I think that's at noon, right?
It's a new, and the president of the chamber will probably yes, say a few words.
I'll put something down.
And, from my elementary school today, their chorus is gonna be there to,
Nice.
close the ribbon cutting ceremony with a couple of songs.
Oh, nice.
So say our Tiger things.
No, what is it?
Yeah, I've been working with their, marketing team.
Nice.
Thank you for that, Ron. And that's all that we have, in the immediate future. I have been, one other thing that I've been working on, that I know Javier and Ron are aware of, been working on getting a, tree walk established in the, town of Scottsville. I've been trying to, stay in touch with Dan about it and get him the information needed to bring it up in budget talks, but his schedule and my schedule did not mesh, recently, and I was unable to make the last planning or, last meeting on that.
Tree walk.
So tree walk, and
Trees.
I'm trying to establish a tree walk that links the town together, including trees on Scanland, down through the trails above the lake, into downtown, including some of the businesses up around our homes, trees in their yard, up around Harrison and the back streets there from the library, and then up into uptown, into Tiger Jewel and some of those trees around there. And the idea is that we would have a sign on these trees with the QR code, so the sign would read the common name, the Latin name, and QR code. The QR code would take you to a website that gives you the Virginia Tech fact sheet on the tree, so not only the scientific facts about it, but it gives us an opportunity for the people that inventory the trees to enter in some personal notes. I think we have a couple state champions, at least one state champion, maybe a couple here in the town limits, different species. And then also I look at it as a learning opportunity for other schools to be able to look at trees and learn what they are, as opposed to a little tree or a mature tree. So, right now, this is a service that Fargo does provide, that obviously I work for. I've been able to work that connection to the point where, myself and a member, Luke Dupont from the, SCAN, will be inventorying the trees. So that's about a couple $1,000 that, will not need to be paid. The signs obviously are pretty expensive with the QR code and the, names on them. So, secured, or got a commitment from SCAN for $1,000, and this last, board meeting, the chamber included $1,000. So that would be enough for at least 50 signs, maybe a little bit more. The last piece of the puzzle, so it's about generally a $6,000 or so project. I'm still missing $2,000 on the website for this, to house the website for this information. And that's $2,100 for a 3-year commitment. Now with that, we get to add signs at whatever junction you want. I'm planning on bringing it to the businesses. So if there's a business out from one of the stores here on Main Street, they can sponsor that sign. We haven't discussed what that would look like other than just covering the cost of adding a sign. It won't add anything to the website. We can just plug that information in. Me and Luke will take on that responsibility, but we can certainly give Javier anybody with access to the tree. So if the tree goes down, we can remove it from the list. We have somebody that particularly likes a specific tree, a specific spot, we can add that to the list. But I view it as an opportunity for tourism in the town. And so I'm going to make it happen one way or the other. Will be presenting this to the town for the website portion of the tree walls. So that's about all I have on the chamber stuff that I wanted to bring to you. If you have any other questions about the chamber, tree wall,
Questions?
All sounds good.
Thank you, Andy.
Andy, no, but he's very active. I'm sure he's on the scan volunteer, so they don't have to scan members, like the chamber has.
Okay.
Not saying that he.
That should walk it.
Yeah, no, he's definitely, me, him and Luke decided.
We're looking for volunteers for that.
Absolutely, no, he's been in it from the beginning of the class. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
ARB report.
I will have one for you at the next meeting. I'll have to go out this week and do my half of the town inventory with a gentleman. Have to secure the town truck for that, but I think Josh has done with his half. We're chugging along.
Have you heard anything about me coming down a big shop?
I have not.
I don't know why it's making me crazy, only because we've told other businesses they can't have all that neon. And it's not that the neon bothers me that much, it's more that,
I've been following up with Jim about a letter and then trying as much as I can to open communication with the owner, but it's been a little bit difficult, so.
Well, I mean, as long as it's written down correctly,
He's not in compliance, yeah.
he's not compliant, because it was contingent on him taking that down. So,
It's clear in our writing that we put that permit I looked over it, so. I feel at least good about that.
You got him dead to rights, but I told Javier, you ought to meet with the gentleman, but it seems like he's having difficulty touching base with, communicating with him.
Yes.
He doesn't answer your requests, in other words.
Yeah, until I started bringing the idea of a letter.
Yes.
yeah, not that it, like I said, not that it bothers me all that much. I just don't want to bother other businesses who were told they can't have all
Right.
that neon.
And that'll happen
Instead of there's
too.
one, that has it and has had it for so long.
I think you're much more reasonable about that than, yeah, I agree with you.
The number of signs or
Square footage. Square footage, you're allowed a maximum based on your frontage.
Yeah.
Good question.
Anyone on the lumens? It's awful bright.
Can't John do anything about that? He runs the shopping center.
I've talked to him about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little bit more details to, yeah.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Frisco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're okay.
okay.
All right, plan commission report.
We spent a fair amount of time talking about minutes. You may recall that the last planning commission meeting didn't happen because the minutes were not there, and that prompted our conversation at the town council, and I thank them for that process, that it helped us, I think, to get in sync. As part of it was my fault in the sense that I feel like we, as a council, had been indecisive on that issue, and it was good to kind of get everybody on the same page. And I think it was a good thing, and staff also rallied to get some of those notes, so that was wonderful. In fact, it's been great to have that, and they were happy about that update. So we chatted about that for a while. We also talked about the budget, and there were several of them were expressing disappointment about the removal of the idea of having somebody be a grant writer in the budget. And I was expressing to them, you know, sometimes you get, if you're the messenger, you kind of put shot at the messenger, but I was explaining that in our process of the budget, that it's good too for people, not only them, but anybody in the town to express their thoughts as we're going through the process. So there definitely was interest in that grant position, and there was some conversation about why that's important to have somebody who's grant writer. And also there's a recognition, you know, from our part that we are dealing with the tightness of the money, so to speak. And then the other issue was we spent a fair amount of time, as we have every week or every month for a while, is on the comp plan. And the comp plan, we reviewed several sections, and we were again talking about the, I mean, what's it called again, the part of the comp plan where there's the money part.
Capital improvement.
So the capital improvement plan, which is something I was suggesting that we as a council listen to, but we didn't really talk a lot about. So that's something that we'll want to talk more about in the future. In other words, it's where the comp plan has some money tied into it. I mean, in other words, suggestions that they think that these are things the town would want to have as plans over the years. And it's not something we've had in the past, and it's an addition that's there. I think it's a newer requirement, right? I don't remember what year, but we're going to go around having it there. It does not lock us into anything, doesn't mean we have to do what's there, but it does mean when that comes back to us as a council, there's going to be some money suggestions that come. And really what the goal of what the planning commission is trying to do is to get the consensus of the town. So it's not really been this council thinks this or this council thinks that. It's what did we find from our meetings? What did we find from our kind of the consensus of what the ideas are? So we're much closer to completing Javier, the date that he thought was.
Yeah, so we have scheduled with 2 planning commissioners also to have a meeting. Lincoln will meet with them next Monday, which is the 20th, in our break room with 2 planning commissioners to try to wrap up some final elements of the planning commission, of the comp plan with the planning commissioners. So we're double booked next Monday here, but we'll still have the council chambers try ourselves. So he's hoping to see how further he can go with that, because he is as much as us interested with wrapping him. He's off to Tangier soon. So I'm hoping that that would lead to something in June presentable.
Can you explain, maybe everybody knows this already, but explain what you mean by teams off to Tangier.
He is, his next assignment is he's moving to Tangier's Island. He's gonna work with their town government to write their comprehensive plan. So he was working on that, but we're big for them. For example, I think they're half our population, so he played with the big bulls and nice and be a little bit more humble.
We can tour the whole island in about 15 minutes.
We maybe dealing with a slightly shrinking population, but they're dealing with shrinking geography.
Yes. So he finds it very fascinating in that respect.
These items, government services.
I sent our minutes out, like, kind of go over briefly. And one of the big things that we talked about a while is getting the actual numbers for 2022, 23 for the budget. It's still listing the books adopted, so we really don't know what the surplus is last year or even this year. So we want to try to get that the actual numbers for last year. I think it's suggested to increase the wheel tax to 7%. Like Scottsville, they recommend that. They like the occupancy tax at 99%.
it's afforded a grant for, you know, for the fire department, adding that to the budget. Maybe looking at a part-time person for the maintenance department, if needed in the summer. Was okay with raising town employees, but no recommendation for the amount. One of the things that was discussed was to increase the rent by stand. It felt very low and possibly increasing that and bring more revenue to the town. But $300, I think it's $300.
300.
They actually said to me, I'm done with that, then it's raised for a long time, which is that.
That was something council more for us last.
There's concern about we haven't spent any that I know of any money on Val Basin Square this year. There was a donation, so I think that should be done as soon as possible because you know, somebody did the donation, show some effort there, at least let them know that we're buying this or that. And there's some ideas out there, and some deals out there to get, you know, barrels and or whatever. And you know, one of the members said he would help do that. There's suggestion they do also add to the budget some sidewalk repair because there's a couple of areas on the sidewalk that are really needed, for, you know, for handicap. You know. Good question.
Thank you.
We met, but there was nothing super interesting to report on. The only thing is that we did go to ARB and ARB was canceled because they didn't have a quorum. So I'm expecting next time that we will get guidance from ARB out on what the E911 signs will look like. Is
Yeah,
that,
I mean,
is that
when
fair to
I'm
expect?
informed, I'll let you know. I think that's probably fair. So,
Yeah.
Somebody had a couple of people asked me like, notice that was sent out and they were wondering if this is optional or mandatory. And if their sign is already visible or their address is already visible, do they still need to have that? Can they opt out of it? You have any sense of what that's all about?
Well, in talking to Chief Cursley, the feeling was both from my standpoint, his, that it should be mandatory that all properties have an E9.
Just in the historic.
In
The whole.
in the whole,
The whole.
right? Now, Eddie pointed out that some homes already have them, they're blue. I don't know what ARB is gonna come up with as far as the look and feel. But Chief Cursley was pretty clear that the consistency of placement was really important. So if they're not placed correctly, what we thought we could do was work as a team to help those people get the sign that they need, which is what the grant has been put in for. And then just have volunteers help them with the sign so that the signs are placed consistently.
Basically.
Yeah, the big thing is the location. So like, for instance, on the Weed Road, and I think I brought this up before, there are apartments behind, but they're not necessarily labeled. There might be a sign in the front of the building, but if there's an emergency in the back of the building, there's not a great way for the teams to actually know that they're going to the back of the building and not the front of the building. If people don't specify that to the 911 dispatcher, then it can get just a little confusing. So the same thing goes with rural properties when you have, you know, multiple mailboxes on a single road into it. Which one is, you know, which house is which on that road, especially at night, these can pose problems. So I have drafted an ordinance. Chief Jenkins has graciously looked it over. I will bring that to the council at the time. I mean, if we don't get the grant, it's probably neat. But I think it's important right now because we have new developments going in. And it would be nice to have this ordinance on the books so that the developers know that they have to comply and put the 911 sign in all new properties. Even if we cannot, deal with all the existing properties, but
Any questions for emergency preparedness? Marks and recreation.
We didn't meet this, from mid-April and, just to go over, we want to get larger maps or plot rules on the kiosks. We're still concerned about the getting somewhat accessible dock and getting some, another quote on that, or good work on that. And we already have a quote on the direction sign and, I guess, and there's some, interest in us getting some things done, and they came up with the budget mindset. So especially for Bennett, for Valley Square. So I don't know what the procedure is, but we're ready to purchase things or get things like this. But if the money is available, it seems like it should be, because I don't think there's budgeted. I don't think we can that out. But I do think that the key is, the priority is basis square, since we have money for that. We could get those signs and, get those the arrows and things like that.
I would love to be involved in that. I know it's not.
Sure.
I have a couple ideas, if I'm not involved,
Sure.
but if I could just sit fire some ideas, see that I have that.
Sounds good to get one. Yeah. I think that's our choice destination. I think.
I think the commercial was
Yeah.
in the, yeah, when I say involved, I do not have the time to look all the clock. I have time for meetings. So let you know, it's just stuff like that.
So I'm just curious, have you thought about ordering these materials and things for the, mixing square?
Well,
The approval from us to, it's especially for the donation, do we need it, approval for donation to?
well, I would like to do a reappropriation, since we have that amount of grants that missed last fiscal year that I'm recuperating this fiscal year. At that same time, we can also include the 5,000. Parks and Rec actually provided a very good
Yeah.
detailed list of items to purchase. So with some discretion, I could move on the amount that is already allocated and approved. That's already appropriated, but not all of that, without the formality and I think the responsibility of
Yeah.
communicating it to council, council's in direction on it. So I can get started.
Yeah, that'd be easier. Start buying stuff.
And Javi, do we have any files available to us? All the signage that's in Valdez Square right now that might have water damage or things like that, will those have to be redone from scratch, or do we still have those like a JPEG or something on a computer where we can just like pull them out? I just have to pay for the printing of them again as opposed to.
So government service committee member gave me an idea of, or gave me the information on who did them originally.
Okay.
So I'm hoping it's similar to the map itself that we've discussed previously, where they would have it on file and be following up. A lot of them seem to have moisture in between and they weren't installed correctly.
Yeah.
So my gut feeling is, I counted them the other days, trying to see if we could just get them all done over.
I feel like,
There's
yeah,
some
whatever
separate-
money you have left in this year's budget with now Basin Square, I think that would be a good place to use those signs there. Not really.
If we settle on a design, I think I can get you the signs for free.
Oh,
Shane, and he prints them on,
yeah.
That's a good
he
price.
prints them on, almost like a plexiglass, but it's, so it's really durable.
So we have to go behind it, off the.
So it's a physical paper bond, it's printed on a sealed surface. So I'd have to talk to him about it. If you get a design,
Let me dig a
How
little.
big,
I think you can go like 4 foot by 5.
could you put a map on one of those? Yeah. Because those maps are small and they're not protected.
I'll talk to them about it, but I don't want to go talk to them, it's not, something we know that we want to do that we want. Design and want. So, I'll see what he says.
Any other questions for parks? Yes.
I will definitely have a better report for you next week, other than that, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to. I thought it was tomorrow, I don't know if it's tomorrow or Wednesday. But are you
So then
still available tomorrow?
Yeah.
If it is on Wednesday, then we can meet,
I just sent an email, so.
um. So I will have a better report for you, next week. One thing though, couple things. We have a second event now in September that Liz Knox is going to be kind of taking the lead on, which, it's going to be a great event. It's going to be like a outdoor wellness type thing, you know, after we have our first meeting of it, you know, spend a lot of email back and forth as to bring that, but that's going to be a really good one. And anybody knows vendors, I'm looking still for vendors for, yeah, sorry, for Venture Festival, so getting into the line for that one. Although we had a good amount, I trust it to be like days of joy when it was real nice and full of vendors.
Are they gonna be down in farm markets?
No, they'll be actually in Gallows Square. Yeah, we kind of almost like horseshoe. If we used to do it down at, Milling Rafting, but the general consensus has been keeping it where the music is now. So we're just letting that be, you know, when folks come off the river.
They don't get that.
Yeah, so there'll be slots broken up, almost like a horseshoe shape around the outer part. Now they said that people can sit in the middle and spot the stage area.
So, Mary, just a couple of things, just FYI, from the book event. There are a couple of comments that consistently came back, because it was not all the time. One was about advertising. I know, we did a lot of Facebook, church groups did, chamber posted it, it was on the website. There was a lot of things that went on, but still, there was, you know, it didn't manage to reach the right community. So that's one thing. The other thing was about Canal License Square. We talked here about it being sort of a tourist place. One of the things came back is that you should have had it at the farmers. I said, well, why? And they said, well, it's too far to walk from the farmers market to Canal Basin Square or to Victory Hall. We have all sat around here and talked about the walkability of Scottsville and the community. I understand, but that's what came back. And so a lot of feedback back for the event was we should have it closer to the farmers market. So again, I'm just giving you feedback, so in your planning, you can factor that in for future events.
I think because it was a new event, that might have been part of the advertising for Canal Bay for the Veto Festival. That's not right. It's been happening every year, and it's so huge that we almost wouldn't even have to advertise it at all, and it would
So
still
it's
be
had
packed.
huge and then not so huge,
Well, the
right?
past few years,
Wax and wane.
only since COVID. I mean, pre-COVID, it was huge. Yeah, huge. Everybody, yeah, literally thousands of vendors and, you know.
Thousands of vendors?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay, that's just $1,000.
I did say thousands, but I know dozens.
I know.
Sorry.
Thank you. I was like, wow, I need to know that.
Yeah. But everybody knows it's like how they say, like, I can see, like, advertising just being hard for new ones.
But it's not so much for Bateau or, you know, the Fort, right, which are pretty established, but you're talking about new ones like the health thing.
Yeah,
There's
as
a
far
one-
as I
So
can
these
talk to
new
Liz
ones,
more, but
when
I
you're,
think
when you set them up.
I'm pretty certain, I have to meet with Liz, this one that's happening in September, but
I'm just.
I'm pretty sure that that one's gonna be.
Yeah, there was one other,
Is that it? Yeah.
I can't remember, but I'll share with you if it comes back to me.
Well, Susan will be great.
You might want to replicate whatever you did for Harry Potter Festival. Yeah.
Yeah,
We-
that
Well,
was
that-
really great.
that- Kristen Fleischler, who is done, she's so tired.
Yeah. But she's one of those, like, has a superpower. of bringing
She
people
had
together.
a super.
That's
power.
her,
It is
one of
super
her
power.
strengths, right? She's very good at doing.
One thing that James just mentioned, I brought up at the chamber, board meeting is we need something in there for you. And to get businesses to contribute a little bit, to sponsor other bands, to have a concert. And I talked to Tiger about when we're ready.
Yeah,
And they're interested.
what are you doing tomorrow?
If we have a meeting. If you have a meeting, I'll try to be
4
there.
o'clock?
Oh, I remember what the other point was. The third point of feedback was, don't have it on a day that there are other events.
Yeah, that was.
And that's what I said, Bill, you know, it was so far, you have to plan these things 5 or 6 months in
Yeah.
advance. She had planned it originally for a Sunday. People on the committee said, no, you should have it on a Saturday. So she moved it, and then later, there was no way to figure that out. So that's one more thing that you may want to factor into your planning. So hopefully that's helping.
No, that's it.
Any other questions from there? Treasurer's report.
Aside from the staff report on the proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25, Melanie has been wrapping up our transfer from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. So now working on catching up on financial statements. Last month we were working on minutes, and we'll move back into that, but hopefully we'll update council with financial statements, and then I think the brunt of my conversation as treasurer will be in the carryover agenda item for next year's budget.
There's report. I've already mentioned about board meeting and, working with Tiger and some of those, but I have 4 items I want to bring up, and just hear me out. First one is attendance. We've had at least once, maybe twice this year, we've had lack of a quorum. Unfortunately, on a couple of those, one of them at least, I remember, was public hearing. And when people don't show up, can't have a meeting, we have to cost the town money because we have to advertise a public hearing again. When you're elected official, you have an obligation. If you're gonna represent people in your community, you have an obligation to the meetings. Everybody has emergencies come up, and some of them, they ahead, some of them, even if it's at the last minute, you call Javier and say, look, I got an emergency, I can't be there, that's just fact of life. But if you don't have an emergency, you just don't come. And at least 3 of us sitting here are wondering if we're gonna have enough people to do any business. It gets a little frustrating after a while, especially if we have people in the audience that came because they wanted to see you conduct business and they had input with that business. So if you find that you have some kind of commitment that is going to prevent you from coming to a meeting, let Javier know they have time if you can possibly. Like I said, everybody hits an emergency once in a while, and that's it's happens. But if you know you're not going to be here, let somebody know. Yeah. The second item is called chain of command. And everybody knows what chain of command is, but there's been some instances lately when a commission or committee member has attempted to ignore the chain of command and act independently. Committee chairmen and liaisons are the next step, are one step below the committee chairman, the commission chairman. And if they have something they want done, they report to you as chairman of that committee, and you bring that to Javier or me or whoever it needs to go to. But occasionally we have these staff meetings with Albemarle County. And it's certainly encouraged that no more than 2 council people, if they want to attend those meetings, again, give Javier a heads up, don't just show up. If you have somebody on your committee that wants to go, talk to Javier about it and see if it's okay with everybody involved, bring that person along with you. But when we have a meeting with Albemarle County, and it's not a meeting with the board supervisors or things like that, but it's a staff meeting, working with staff up there to get something done, and strangers to show up. It can be disconcerting for those involved with that meeting, the planning of that meeting. Second, next one is criticism of the staff, and I mentioned this last time, but we have, it's disturbing when somebody criticizes our staff for not doing their job. They're doing a great job. And I come by here 3 or 4 times a week, and I don't say, hey, I'm coming. I just show up, and I've never come into this office and found them doing anything other than their work that they need to do. And we all talk about how overwhelmed they are with the work that they have to do. So I don't appreciate it when people criticize the staff for wasting time. And I think they need respect, and they need to be, and anyone involved in town business needs to be respected, just like you want to be respected as council members. And they're not wasting the public's time. They're not wasting the town's time in any way, shape, or form that I have seen in the last 4 years. And then the final one is the advocacy question. It seems to me a misconception that elected officials may not advocate for something. That's what elected officials do. They advocate for causes that are brought before them by the people that elected them to the position that they're in. So don't tell me that as elected officials, we can't advocate for something that's going to be a benefit for the community. We have every council person, every elected official that represents citizens of a particular geographical location has a duty to advocate for anything that will make their lives better and make the community a better place to live. So I don't want to hear more about not being able to advocate for something that you feel strongly about. Particularly, if you're getting paid to do what you call a lobbyist. We don't have any lobbyists in town. Okay? We have people that care about the community and they care about the overall welfare of the community. And if they have a particular cause that they're passionate about and they want to advocate for that cause, that is certainly within their job description. So those are the things I wanted to mention. That will be my report for tonight. Now, Mr. Bowling, you have anything for us?
Just a few things. I think I mentioned before that Javier mentioned that he's asked me to help him to go through the process involved in enforcing the zoning ordinance or the ARB or whatever. And I've done this before with Matt, and so it's to some extent reinventing the wheel, but it needs to be done. And basically, you all need to know that the procedure is that if the zoning administrator or what have you, the ARB official determines that there's a violation, that they give a written notice, and that written notice has to be done exactly and precisely with lots of dotting your I's and crossing your T's, and you haven't done it correctly, and then you haven't done anything. And once you give that notice and make a determination there's been a violation, then the person that you direct the letter to has usually 30 days to respond. And if he doesn't respond, then the matter becomes what's called a thing decided. And that is music to lawyers' ears, because once something becomes a thing decided, then you don't have to prove that the zoning administrator was right and the landowner or citizen was wrong. The matter is decided, and the only issue is what punishment should take place, or what penalty should take place, or the order is requested. But the procedure usually is that you have to give notice that the applicant can appeal, and who you appeal to is not the court, but to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And the town's been fortunate over the years because you don't go out of your way to cause disputes. You, I would say, the town council over the years has bent over backwards to try to get compliance, particularly in tax collections, but also in the zoning area, because they want their business community to thrive and they want their citizens to be happy in Scottsville. And that's pretty much been successful. But if you do have an appeal, the appeal is going to be to the Board of Zoning Appeals, for example, of a zoning violation or a violation of the sign ordinance. And one thing I've done over the years is notice that there's difficulty from time to time of getting the Board of Zoning Appeals to have a full roster. For some time now, there's been a vacancy in the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I would request the town council that needs to seek out some applicants, or one applicant would be appropriate, but and make a recommendation, because the process is not appointed by the town council, it's appointed by the circuit court judge. So
I have council for 3 years in November. I have no idea what you're talking about on board power.
well, no, I've talked about it before. I don't know how long.
Who sits on it? Do they meet?
Before I became a council person, I was on it too.
Do they only exist if there is an appeal? They don't have actual meetings, right?
No, they shouldn't have
Once a year.
meetings.
Once a year.
They should only meet when there's a matter to be put before them.
Okay.
I thought the 2 or 3 years I was on it, we had one. Terry loves it, sure, I was on it.
Terry Long?
Yeah.
Oh, very, very.
Very long, yeah.
The first time I showed up here, the first day I appeared at a town council meeting, I discovered that the first order of business was going to be a Board of Zoning Appeals hearing, and nobody had told me about it. So, and they said, Bowling, do your thing.
And is there no one sitting on it now?
Oh, yes, you have, what do you have?
We have 3 members.
3 members?
We need a vacancy.
Who
So
are
we
you?
have a vacancy.
Okay.
It's very long. And I can't remember off the top of my head. I have it in my email because when we meet once a year, they.
Yeah. So I've made this pitch before, but I mean, it's hard to get people to do it because they suddenly realize that they never meet. You follow me?
Well, that might be a good thing.
Well, it probably is a good thing. It is a good thing. But
I
when
thought
they
you
do
got a
meet,
committee that doesn't meet.
yeah. But that's so what you have to do is, and I'm glad I brought this up. I've brought it up before. I don't know whether it's been in the last 4 years. I know it's been, I call it recently. I'll use that word, but it seems like it's been in recent years. So you've got a vacancy, and the process of filling a vacancy is not really easy because you don't make the appointment. The circuit court judge makes the appointment, and it takes a while to get it done. And it's not a high priority. I don't want to speak for the circuit court judge, certainly, but I would bet that it's not a high priority with them. So at some point when you have some time, which you never do, come up with somebody who would be it's a quasi judicial official. They act like a judge, but they're a citizen body, and they hear the evidence and then they render a decision. The decision in this case, it's going to be, is the ARB ordinance in violation, or is the sign ordinance in violation, or is the setback in violation, so on and on and on. And you're probably going to be having more of these cases as you start to have some housing develop.
So let me ask this. If there were to be an appeal tomorrow and we only have 3 people, could it to be the four?
Oh, no, you've got a quorum and three actually,
So we need a fourth, but three is better.
actually three is much better than four, because four, I can tell you, I represent board of zoning appeals in other places, and four results in ties. And that's never a good thing. So three meets the quorum requirements, that's all you need. But it wouldn't hurt to have another member appointed, because what has happened over the years is that people don't do it forever and they resign.
So they oversee, the zoning, requests.
They oversee.
Somebody contends that, and then they see that.
They oversee, they hear appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator or the town official who's responsible for carrying out the enforcement of the architecture review board.
So like say, it's on that sign statement, so would that be the zoning administrator, or would that be the ARB that says that sign is not appropriate?
The zoning administrator could decide.
Okay.
Okay, you could have a violation, you could have both, okay? But in the end, it's the zoning administrator or the town administrator who wears a different hat called zoning administrator, whatever you want to call him, who makes that determination. That's the way it's set up. But the appeal then, under the ARB, if he makes the determination, they can appeal to you by statute. But for the zoning side of things, the appeal has to be directly to the board of zoning. And if they don't appeal, then I'm very happy, and because then after 30 days, it becomes a thing decided. Which is a lot easier to enforce in court, quicker, than if you have to go into court and prove that the zoning administrator is correct. And it wouldn't hurt to have a full roster, because, as I said, from time to time, people die, resign, leave town, what have you. So it's good to go, good to do. And it's not an instant process to get somebody appointed. You have to file a petition and an order and set a court case up and go through the process. And so
They're appointed by the court.
they are.
I was out there last, they were appointed by the court. I think they said, okay, come
I
on.
don't know how you got on with you
No,
on the
did
board
you
of
get
zoning
appointed by the
appeals.
court?
Yeah, I think you did.
They just
If
needed
you
to-
didn't, I don't want to go there.
Oh.
Hopefully there were no appeals.
I don't think it's been appealed in 10 years.
Oh, no, there's been an appeal more recently than that. Huh?
Did you think of one?
Oh, yeah. I was there.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Bowen?
That's all I have.
Any questions, Mr. Bowen?
No, but it sounds like that is a process that we might want to document,
Mhm.
right? So if you've had to go through it several times as people change or whatnot, it might be good to document the process so that it's on the books.
Well, you just need to appoint somebody. It's
So
like,
like a town resident.
yes, it has to be a town resident.
But see, it's those kinds of rules that, it would just be good to have written down too for everyone. I'm not saying you should do it, but. someone
Well,
should
I
do it.
mean, you should do it.
Yeah,
But it's not easy to find somebody.
Right. For any committee, you know.
Well, that's a committee that may never have to do it. That's beautiful. I mean, you could be a council member also.
All right, let's move on. Treasurer, so we did treasurer's town administrator's report.
So I included in my staff report a few meetings I've had in the last month. But a majority of our staff,
Can I interrupt you, before you get started? I have a family member who's sick, and so, with council permission, I'll see how the budget proceedings go, but if it's okay with you, I may leave at some point in the budget discussions. Thank you.
so, a majority of my staff report is related to the next item, but I'll just quickly report on 3 items or on 3 events I've recently attended. So on April 18th, I went to the the VDOT Culpeper District Locality Day. So essentially it was an introduction for staff members of the Culpeper District in regards to grants for VDOT. I attended and saw some members of VDOT that I already was familiar with, met some new ones. I would say that communication was probably the most valuable as always with these. But I attended in anticipation that eventually we might want to have more for conversations about VDOT grants or VDOT projects. Or at least, and part of me just staying informed so I could answer questions down the road. Beyond that, I think the most important thing is that on Mr. Lawless' departure, VDOT recommended to us to attend one of their training programs for grant applications. So I'll follow up with VDOT staff about that. They have kind of a pilot program, like a 101, to get staff members for different municipalities like prepared for it. It seems to be pretty laborious and pretty detail oriented, I guess I'll put it that way. Beyond that, I was invited by the Deputy Chief of Emergency Management to attend a Red Cross shelter exercise. So Red Cross was doing a shelter exercise in Central Virginia. And Albemarle County asked them to do an exercise. So the same way as any situation in which the Red Cross would get called in to make a shelter, they kind of just run through it as a training exercise. So they set up a desk at the front, they pull in the trailers, they set up the gym. It was the anti-school, so they set up the gym. You know, they get the bathrooms ready. They run through mock exercises. Hey, in this situation, how do you register or how do you follow up with somebody? The most useful of that was kind of to see how that exercise works. And then to get a little bit of perspective into how these shelters work. And then also I found it very useful to look at the intake forms. So it gave me a little bit of perspective about how, I hope it never happens, but how if a resident had to go to a shelter, what process they would have to go through. Beyond that, the third one was a meeting with Albemarle County's Community Development on April 23rd. So I went up to Albemarle County with Bill Hudson and community members and committee members. We met with community development staff, including Frank Bull and Kevin McDermott. So community staff member, high up community development staff. Generally what we discussed was the process of site plan reviews. So some of it is a clarification, demarcation between Albemarle and Scottsville responsibilities. Essentially, Albemarle working a lot with our building code and then me as a zoning administrator, or the town administrative zoning. And then we were provided some information about review on site plans and advice on, if interested, with council on how to go through a process to receive consultants as a town. Beyond that, the majority of the rest of my administrator report is relevant to next year's budget.
I have two questions.
Mhm.
The shelter exercises at Yancey, would that process be the same if it was a shelter? Our shelter is here at the elementary school,
Yeah.
correct? So that process would be mirrored if we had to shelter our residents at the elementary school?
Yes,
Is that
that's a good
correct?
point, yeah.
Yeah.
So part of it was Albemarle working with the Red Cross about how they would implement that in different areas. So if it was something on closer to Crozet, whatever shelter they would use over there, they would go through the same. So
Did they happen to highlight anything about pets and residents with pets? Did they talk about?
that was
anything?
interesting. One of the test cases was somebody shows up with their pets.
Right.
So they've been working on scenarios and they were actually workshopping. It was very interesting in front of me, trying to figure out what materials they still had. You know, the day of, they were like, do we still have those dog cages from years ago? But they'll be following up. It seems to be something that the Red Cross has even noticed as very important. What I could do is follow up with a Red Cross member and see what they're kind of formulating. They've been thinking about also doing an MOU with SPCA to try to work through that. But it was a question very much relevant. I was literally standing there in the gym listening to two of them talk it through. So let me report back to you. After
Yeah,
that.
I'm glad at least it came up. Because, you know, there's a lot of people who won't go without their pets, so,
That was the scenario.
Yeah.
They wouldn't budge. So, for example, they thought if you can get a resource, you can kind of kennel, put place in a school, you just make a hallway. Or you try to do something like some PCA, but
yeah, and right outside of this, regular emergency, I remember years ago when we had the big snowstorm, do you remember, it was like several feet? We got stuck along 15 coming into, we were living at like Monticello at the time. We had our dogs with us and we could go no further. And thank God at the time, I think it's a Best Western up there, it's Zion, was taking in people and not charging them, and they let all the dogs come in, who were not just us traveling with dogs, but lots of people traveling with dogs. So it's equally as important with, you know, for people traveling, if there's a weather emergency or something like that, what do you do with the pets? And they have really well organized, so. And then, Javier, the last thing I had is the small town
yes.
conference in Abingdon, Virginia. Are we registered for that? Is there any information?
I was under the impression that council members would register. I'm hesitant about attending because there's a work session that day. Especially if we want to use some of the budget we have for town council and administrative, I could follow up with registration.
Yeah, because the last time I attended a conference, Matt registered for me. Are you registered, Eddie?
No, I think I've got a conflict.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought you would register for us because
Okay. I'll follow.
if the town's gonna pay for it, if the town's not gonna pay for it, then I'll register myself. And I will then probably, sorry, Mary, I will probably attend by Zoom because there is a work session.
I feel like I've registered myself for conferences like that. And when I register, I just put that the town was paying for it, and I guess somehow they got in touch with that. And like, whether I've done it on Zoom or gone to Richmond and gone in person.
Yeah.
Both times I registered myself, and under payment, it just like, I was able to put, you know, town of Scottsville, and I guess they contacted me. Either Holly or now about it. I don't know, I haven't tried to.
I don't know how it works.
I haven't tried to register for something.
It might be possible with this because we are a member of VML as part of it, but it's also through tech.
The
I'll look at-
VML conferences is what Matt
Yeah.
registered me for,
Okay.
so I don't know what the process is.
Let me check in tomorrow.
Okay, all
Follow up there.
right.
Any other questions for Alan? Okay, well, then we need to work on the budget a little bit more. It'd be ideal if we get all the questions answered. March,
I have a couple, I started, which.
let's, I'll here give us an intro to this, and then, that we can take it from there, because we would certainly need to have a public hearing next month and prove this.
Yes.
However, it comes in.
So let me jump into the highlights from my summary of it, and then maybe we can jump into details. So just going off of the staff report, we left May 1st, which was a special session of the town council with a budget scenario that had a deficit of 11,000. Town council requested that town staff provide a recommendation on how to complete the budget with a balanced amount. To be presented today, the 13th of May. So the big headline and at the bottom of the first page is that currently this scenario has a budget surplus of a little under 4,000, which would achieve the objective of having a balanced budget with a small surplus. After leaving the budget scenario, I realized that we were working off of a spreadsheet error, which didn't account for the grant revenue from the Justice Assistance Grant. So that's that 19,000 we'd spend that year if approved for that grant, 24,000 for cone trailer, et cetera. We've talked about it previously as a town. On top of that, that led to an underestimate of revenue. Beyond that, I worked with Melanie who, during the first, presentation of a budgeting area, recommended that we review our utility expenses. So we did some math in the meantime and then added a little bit of an inflation to our utility bills, but that led to some savings. I overestimated, but I wanted to be safe with our utilities. Beyond that, we added the, I think I'm missing this. Oh, I jumped a paragraph, but in the meantime, since during the first meeting, we discussed, and we discussed it today earlier, the Region 10 contractual contract, that is reflected now in this budget, which would be budget neutral, but we expect about 13,000 in revenue and then expenses. So that's just been inflected to update. And then the last paragraph in broad strokes, I received a renewal policy from our current insurance program, and I'm waiting on a policy proposal from a competitor, hopefully next week. But they came in at a much more competitive rate. So there was an overall reduction from 17 to 14. And then I cleaned up some of the counting to make it more clear. So some of the expenses that are more relevant to the police department compared to administrative, but the totals, the important part, it went down from almost 18 down to 14. Same thing, for example, I split out farmers market because it was recommended to get a little bit more detail into all the expenses there. So that's reflected a little in our budget right now. But those are the big broad strokes. The last 2 pages of my staff report include a detail of changes since the first. But other than that, we could jump into it if there isn't anything in general they have questions for me.
I would say go with the comments.
All right, so the big thing that stood out to me, and I think it's throwing off this being for the balanced budget, is this transient occupancy tax jumping $10,500 from the previous year. I don't think that's justified, and if it is, I'd like to see the reason behind that, the drop.
So the much larger increase is due to better compliance on our transit occupancy, since this is the first fiscal year where Virginia State Code requires these companies, Airbnb, Vrbo, et cetera, to send a monthly check to counties. So previously, before the point increase that was proposed, I was looking at 15 flat, and that was based off of just my monthlies coming in strong. What that brings up is a question of how strongly people were complying when they were reporting to us prior to having it automatically taken out of transactions when they were doing their Airbnb. I am kind of curious about how much compliance there was previously, if every month we're getting stronger returns on taxes from the major companies. They do have an accounting firm that does it for everyone.
Are they still not giving us a detailed breakdown now?
Yeah, so that's a persistent issue in Virginia.
Apparently it's nationwide. I was just listening to an NPR thing on it, and I was like, we were talking about that over the summer.
Daily Progress, maybe 2 months ago, did a really good article on it. They're arguing free speech on it, but I think it's more than reasonable as anything that I could ask for information in regards to how much revenue you're bringing in. I have some community members that are complying, which is, I think, heartwarming about small towns, but I already took their money. They don't really need to report back. And then we only have one that would be considered traditional transit occupancy, which would be Lumpkin, so they report quarterly. So it's an interesting situation in where half glass, half full, half empty. I'm having better compliance and stronger revenue because the companies are pulling it out automatically when they do the listing and people pay. But I don't have the same visibility. Naturally, I could go around and audit people, but
The report that I was listening to, and what they're doing is I could be running an Airbnb out of you know, my spare bedroom for all you, like, and now anybody can just open up an Airbnb since we don't have an address, we don't know where the money's coming from or whatever. And apparently that's why we're fighting to not share that information. They are afraid of all this.
Well, they don't have, the tax man has great power. And,
Yeah.
you can get that revenue information, but if you're reporting it on your federal income tax return, you're filing it as a Schedule C, or you've incorporated or set up a limited liability company, then it's going to be on the record. If you're just flat out cheating, then you've got not only the town of Scottsville to worry about, but you got the state of Virginia, then you got the IRS.
I mean, that's a whole
I
other
think
story.
my.
But basically, they're getting around zoning by not sharing that.
Right.
So to Alex's point
I think
before,
it gives a false, not false, but a hopeful image of the budget, which is nice, but I don't think realistic. I think I'd rather be surprised with that money as it comes in, and go, oh,
But if
we're
we are,
above budget,
if we
rather
are,
than budgeting for that.
I feel
Is
pretty,
it? I don't know.
That's, I think that's what you're saying.
He said
How
it's
every month
increasing, but I don't know.
it's,
if it's-
well, it's stronger than it was before this new compliance. So over about 8 months, I projected out, so I caught the half end of the summer and then the slow season. And when I was doing the estimates, I played it pretty conservative, and that was 15. And then the increase in the tax would just be 1,500.
And is that all because the Airbnb is nationally closing it?
These
If we
were
list-
quarterly, yeah. And
That's where you're taking your figures from.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the check I get every month
Okay.
from the Airbnb or,
But if you're not on that, you're just doing it like you talked about, then you're not gonna pick, you're not estimating that.
wait,
Well, you've got to have a reporting system, and you've got a reporting system that's based on a national company, you're reasonably secure in your estimate. But if you're just doing it by sticking your finger up in the air and wetting it, saying, I think this is gonna happen.
It's based on actual.
no, it's based on what he's been getting in since the law.
And then with the increase to the 9%, it's the extra $1,500, right, to bring us to 1,650.
Yeah,
I just think it's gonna give us a false image of it, I'll leave it up to you guys to change that or not. I just think that we're looking at a balanced budget here, and it's really not one, but.
I am confident with this. When I was working, like when I was just coming in every day, one of the problems that I was trying to solve was how many Airbnb landlords were not sending us money. Like there was one Airbnb owner who has multiple houses in Scottsville who hadn't paid, and what was it, Javier, like a year and a half's worth of taxes that he owed us,
can we say a few quarters?
and sending emails like, hey, you owe us a lot of money, and just not getting it. And multiple landlords doing that. Also, if they rented out their house, they didn't have to tell us they rented out their house, so they just didn't give it to us. With the new law that's in effect now, if I rent an Airbnb, that tax is included when I pay for it, and the landlord never sees it. Airbnb takes it and sends us that money directly. So I'm confident, knowing how much money we can get and how many were not reported, having gone through it, I'm comfortable with that.
But I think there's a couple of points to, and we've talked about this a little bit before. I mean, all of these are projections, right? None of them are, very few are consistent. And if something changes in the environment and this number happens to go down, that could happen anywhere.
Which is why I pointed that one out specifically. I understand they're all predictions, but this is a double,
But he said he's gotten like. The fact
I get that,
he
I'm
got
not worried
summer
about that.
and
What I'm worried is
the
that something goes on and they go, it's not worth me having an Airbnb anymore. And they stop doing that.
And that could.
Well, no matter what we put it in there, I know it's that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I
Meals
just-
tax is the same way.
It's just-
That's why we've talked about revenue. We don't have a consistent, predictable revenue stream.
But
Which
then,
was the
what
discussion
I
of
think that
county.
comes along with that is also not predicting a budget that's dependent on the position.
Well, what would
But if
you?
it's the unfortunate thing is
I
we're
would say that
not,
there's a consistent increase. We have new restaurants and new foods, new sales places coming in. We have a reliable,
Yeah, but
those
next-
businesses are growing in town. I would say that this dropped last year.
but we have an obligation to budget based on what we see. But, so for example, if Javier is saying, based on past 8 months,
Mhm.
taking in slow season, taking in summer, taking in everything else, all he has to base it on is the past 8 months and an increase of the extra 1,500 or whatever. We are as obligated. He can't, he's getting 1650, so we have to put that 1650. It would be just as wrong for us to say 20,000 as it would be to say 10,000.
So for,
We have,
so for example, in our-
but that's how a budget works. A budget is not what
I
forecast.
think the projection, the forecast is something I have an issue with.
But
And I'm
you
fine,
have to
I'm comfortable.
project out the numbers that you have, and on the numbers that we have, that's the
Comfortable with
projection.
that, that's
that is
fine.
there.
I'm not comfortable with that, but it's.
I mean, that's
We have multiple.
comfortable or not, that's how a budget works.
Yeah.
Numbers that we have,
I have
giving
full
this-
years.
But the law has changed. I mean, the way it's happening now is different. He's got to go on the numbers that he has now. And
So what
those are the numbers that he has now.
what I could provide over email is our, revenue we've received over the years. So for example, our January financial statement for transit occupancy has 12,000 in it. That's also catching up on a few checks I had over the summer when I was, understaffed. So we have it, so even a few months over the summer, that's a relatively conservative, estimate, in my opinion, but. But
Well, I just, to Alex's point though, I think it is fair to point out that, you know, the economic environment can change, right? If you look at the news, meals, all the restaurants in major cities are reporting a shortfall in business for what they've been before. Fast food is reporting a cutback in earnings because people are cutting back because of economic pressures. Travel is being cut back because of economic pressure. We might have to deal with that next year as these things. They will eventually hit us.
We can't say we're afraid one of our Airbnbs might close, so let's pretend that doesn't exist and bring it in.
Well, I understand what
No,
you're
no, no,
saying.
and that's what I'm
I'm saying that he
saying.
has a valid point and we should.
I don't think
that's been a lot of those.
Oh, yeah.
if you guys are fine with that. So, I think that that's going to skew this. I think that 8 months of numbers is fine and that's optimistic, it's good. I would love to see that happen, but if it doesn't, we're in a bad position. We're now not having.
Yeah, but that, you know, with a lot of these numbers, Alex, that I've been talking about before, they are not predictable. They are, many of them are subject to the economic, so the macroeconomic picture. So they're all based pretty much on that.
We talked a while back about, a list of Airbnbs, we have a list of them, or we even, because we were gonna kind of track them to see, when they're due for their renewals. This was to get renewed every 5 years, I guess that's part of the.
I did that. We presented this
I've never
last
seen
summer.
the
No,
list.
last summer we
Do you have a
did.
list?
None of them are, yes, we have a list. You should have a list, but without us,
I've never seen it.
when I was working here during the week,
You put the list.
everybody got the
That's
list.
new, so-
It's another couple of years before any of them are up for review.
Right, it'd be good to see the list and the dates that they're due.
Okay, if you go through your email, you'll find it, and I can try to find it.
I don't remember seeing it.
It was about a year ago. It was when I was it about a year ago?
Almost a year, yeah,
Yeah.
would have been summer last year,
Yeah,
And how many do we have, about 10 of them, you said?
around there, yeah.
It'd be good to know when they're due.
Okay, it's another couple of years of this
Yeah.
before any.
Javier,
your question for you, thank you, everybody, for your input. When you made this adjustment to get to this new number with the 3945, walk us through what the main adjustments were to that.
So nothing in revenue changed since the first. So it was mostly expense. So detail oriented. One large help was the miscoding of the 19,000. So we were incurring an expense of 24,000 for our grant without accounting for
For the 19.
coming in. Right. So that helped out. Beyond that, we saved about almost 4,000 in insurance. So I went higher, concerned because there's not a lot you can do with limited insurance.
So it was just the things you've already said, basically, you said, I know you said that before, but it's like just kind of.
Utilities went down, so reductions in, Melanie's been helping me out with payroll details, so we even saved 700 there. That's that second bullet point on reductions on page 4. A little bit here and there on various utilities you'll see showing up. An overestimation, but a little bit here, 500, 700 there starts to add up.
Does this include the COLA that we talked about?
Yes,
Yes.
so this budget already in that May 1st included 3% COLA.
And the projections on revenues downstairs,
It is included there, because the one I presented out
the adjusted.
included the adjustment,
Okay.
and I've already spoken with them, so
Okay,
they have a heads up.
okay.
So I'm confident.
The adjustment from downstairs, I mean, scan,
Yeah, from 3 to 6.
so it is.
Oh, it's in there? It's in there?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
It's in this because it was in the first, on May 1st, we included that.
How about the last time we, upgraded the heating and air conditioning system here, we double scanned it to pay for it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
It's a little from 300 to 600,
yeah.
we
Um,
gotta pay.
so in reductions,
Went
there's-
back down.
So it's 600. So that's it.
which ends up being, I think was 1,600, I think, if we did whatever 3 times 12 is.
Did you happen to follow up on the timbering up at Buckingham?
Not yet. Maybe I could report on that.
Yeah, if you could take that and report next time. I mean, just out of curiosity, it still may not be quite ready for prime time. But again, I think we need to look at managing all of our assets much more strategically and how we can get money out of them. Make them work for the town.
So small increase, there's very important, the increases. So small increase on office supplies, because we are just coming in heavier. I was afforded an opportunity, so I did recommend that staff let's try to increase the amount for part-time administrative. We cut it back down to 8,000. I put it up back to 16 in this recommendation. But that's documented in the document. A big one, I think government services recommended this also. We realized that we were over projecting on street lighting. But then at the same way, we under projected on our telephones administratively. So that's fiber for the office and then all the voice over on TV. Beyond that, including administrative amount for telephone. So as part of our FOIA training this year, we should try to, as much as we can, keep professional communications on work devices. So that will be a little bit of a breath relief. And then in regards to, since I found that we had more opportunities to invest in the town, I included an increase on capital improvements for Bruce Park, which was discussed as a park that was important to us. But in the May 1st one, we did not have any money specifically designated for that. So I looked at it as an opportunity to work on a masonry there. And maybe with our new staff member next year, try to work on some planting to revitalize the park. Beyond that, I increased a little bit for capital improvements for the farmers market. On May first, we cut back some of those capital improvements, expecting that we would do some of the work into the future. But I think we could just try to get a little bit more work done next fiscal year, since we have the opportunity with a little bit more revenue.
Savings, you've done.
Yeah, the savings I found. And then, the police department, the insurance is just an adjustment to more accurately reflect workers' comp and auto in between primarily the administrative department, the police department, and then a little bit the parks department. But overall, we saved 4,000 because, they came in much more competitive on our insurance for the year.
Now, we talked about better security on the doors and stuff. Is that under municipal buildings and under capital improvement?
So I have
Or do
for.
you have it? Is there another line item? I'm sorry, have you?
There's a building security, it's on the, that's all.
No.
Yeah, I put it in where I can't find it.
Yeah.
As we talk cameras and,
So as municipal, I have for. let's see,
Pump station.
For office security improvements under municipal building, we have 3,000, which was looking at improvements to the exterior doors and cameras. I recently got quoted for a new door on our shed for our generator out by the pump house, around 2,000, which was alarming.
yeah,
But seems to be a quote you get out there. And then to increase cameras, we're already lucky enough that we have the camera system set up from what they put in VDOT. So if you want to increase cameras on the building, it's much more affordable. You're just installing the cameras, not the whole setup around
Right.
it to look at it. So.
so you price that in.
Yeah, so I thought of about 2,000 for the doors, 1,000 for the cameras, and that seems like a reasonable price, considering both of them.
Okay, well, at least we have some incremental improvement for them. Thank you.
And the description on that line changed because I thought through that.
That's why I didn't see it specifically.
Is the surplus, is that the same thing as a cash balance? Is that the cash balance? In a sense, we're supposed to have 5% cash balance, which would be 40,000. And so, well, I just want to point out that the surplus is about the lowest I've ever seen, $4,000. Seems like we need $40,000 or 20 or 30 as a safety net.
On May 1st, our 2018 to 2019 was $4,000. I just cut it off because we're condensing and moving forward. So pre-pandemic, not looking past that, we had instances where we have been with a surplus of 4,000. That 2019, not from May 1st shows it. 21, 22,
You had a dismal picture for a number of years.
Yeah.
Really, you're not in the business, you haven't made money too, so that's another, it's a dismal picture from one perspective, but the other side of it is you're running a lean and mean operation and you're not making any money except what you have to.
Right.
So this is not, cutting it close is not something that suddenly comes this year. It's been the tradition.
One of the things following up on what Mr. Boland said is last week, for those of you who weren't here, we talked about basically the need to make sure we cover our police department, town staff, cost of living. That's basically the most important things we talked about, is to cover those costs, to stay competitive. And then, in a sense, we asked the town staff to cut where they could so that we could make sure the budget worked. And in the end, I think what you're saying, Mr. Bowling, is as a lean fighting machine, we don't have a lot of room, so to speak. Like in other words, there's not a lot of fat in the budget because we just don't have it.
Well, I think 16,000 of administrative staff, we can probably call off this year.
I'd like to think about that too. I don't think that's necessary. But we don't even know.
I mean, it was a big discussion last week.
Well, we don't even know what that
But
entails.
Bill, you were the first one, I'll say it again, we said it last time, you were the first one, where's the minutes, where's this, where's that, how come we're not getting this done, how come I don't see this? Because you're expecting
Well, we'll get
clerks.
You got that going.
I'd rather give that money to our clerk and town administrator.
Or sell it.
Or wellness, or just something to show appreciation.
They
We don't
still
need an extra employee.
We don't need.
Time.
That's so complicated. That's a-
Okay, we cannot afford an extra.
I agree,
This budget says we can afford.
there's things in this budget that should be in this budget, that, there's zero for some of the things. And
My question is,
I just think that.
my question is, the last two administrators and clerks staff, Georgia Goodwin, his clerk, Matthew and Javier, they didn't need an administrative assistant. And we had delays sometimes, but eventually it all got done. Why do we need one now?
The world has gotten more complex.
No, I don't want to hear that. That's
The time. Town council.
Thank you, well, no, thank you.
What is the complexity that?
Things have gotten more expensive. We understand that too.
16,000 is a part-time person at the front
In the
desk.
back.
For reception.
Because
How many people?
they have to attend more county level meetings. They're out of the office. They have to collaborate.
How many people come? We're such a.
You know, we can argue
Five
about.
people coming in.
We're talking about people coming in. We're talking about somebody who's able to do the minutes, so
We
you're.
have somebody.
Website updates, you
And she's
guys
come up.
are
I
complaining
think
about
she's
website.
learned it. Now I think we gotta go. I don't think she needs a assistant do it. And Javier can do the
Have
minutes.
we asked?
If we're just getting somebody to do the minutes, that's a job description.
One of the things, just in deference to this, when we went back to the staff last week, we basically said, we want to cover the police, cover the town staff, and we need to figure out how do we make the budget work. I think it's a legitimate issue. Is 16 workable or not workable? Part of my general frame of mind has been always to defer to staff actually about a year. So as it comes as a recommendation, you can do this whole bit of debate. Tell us why, so to speak.
So I do think with a year, you get more efficiency out of both of your staff. But I have a feeling that I have been much more particular and careful and detail oriented on items that I don't think were stressed as much previously. I'm in a new role, so I have a different amount of discretion on that. I think it would help with some of the quality of the staff office that I've heard responses from council members. Especially if you want to go into grant writing, since we cut grant writing, it would afford more of an opportunity for that. And I think to some of the responsiveness that I've heard expressed before, some of the catching up on items, it would help with that.
One of the things I will say, one of the things Javier, I will say, again, coming from the planning commission. I think it was pretty uniform from the planning commission that they really want the opportunity for more grant writing. So if you're telling me that this is a way that gets more of that, that would make them happy, so to speak. It would make the planning commission happy. And that I think is helpful, because in other words, some of this is figuring out how do we use our resources to get the most for the town. And I think what you're saying there is, with the new staff, you're kind of getting your feet in terms of how to do it. So I'd like to give you the benefit of that.
If to be blunt, if I'm not collating meeting minutes, I'm still gonna stay busy on other items that you guys have expressed importance to me.
All right, so here's my scenario I'll lay out here.
Mhm.
Town staff. If you can hold off for another year without having additional assistance, we could give you a, X, Y, and Z bonus. That's, let's say, half of $16,000.
Mhm.
That's good for us. Is that something that's doable for you? Would you guys be able to function as a, town staff properly? And that's not, not just a scenario right there, but
We'll have a different budget next year, though.
do that. We're looking into the future. We have more businesses coming in. We have more consistent revenue.
Can't create more
Put
time.
something in the budget doesn't mean you're gonna go out tomorrow and buy or come first.
But I mean, we are talking about being in essentially like a wartime, where we're tight right now. And I think that until we're getting more money into the it, I'll be surprised to do that.
And they did this with the DMV and that failed. So, this, one of the things different about this is not like buying a sign or you know, repair. This is a recurring expense. This will be 18, if you put 16,000 in, it's gonna be 17,000 next year and 18,000, because it's gonna grow and they're gonna want more money, more benefits,
This is not a
healthcare.
benefit, it's part-time, there's no benefits here.
I know, but I mean, it's recurring expense. It's next year's budget too. It's not just this
It's
year.
minimum wage.
I thought it was $20 an hour. It's
Is it 20,
No, 16.
16?
not minimum wage.
It'd be, it's,
And that's.
I'm hearing people
Who is the
say,
first?
you.
Yeah.
don't know.
Are they steel or just receptionist?
But what do you keep, it's, you keep saying receptionist, or oh, nobody can say it. It's somebody to do the minutes, it's somebody to do the clerical work. That town clerk and town administrator is there, for the amount of money that we're paying a clerk and administrator to be wasting time filing and typing and
It's not
doing
wasting time,
minutes.
it's the job.
Yeah,
No, it
in
should
the
be
job
their
description.
job. In any other town, in any other town, that's not.
But we're not,
An admin
so
assistant
we have the
job.
money to be
But
another
you-
town.
But for people to say, we don't, they don't need help, they don't need help, especially for the person saying they don't need help. One of them saying it is the same person who complains when we don't have something, and the other.
It's our
person
job.
saying it. We
Might be annoying, we
talked
gotta do
about
our
this
job.
so
How
many
things
times,
change.
so many meetings that you weren't at, like we heard them say,
Well,
we need the help.
That's not,
We have,
not being in the meeting, not.
we have a
It
maintenance.
it is, because we've discussed this so many times already.
I haven't,
We've had meetings
I
where we
haven't
have.
heard justification.
Okay, wait.
We had a-
All that-
So.
We had a maintenance guy who didn't want to do bathrooms. And then we hired a maintenance guy who does remarkable, he does vacuums. So I think she's doing minutes, so she's catching up, and I think, you know,
But that's not-
hire somebody to do minutes.
That's time you cannot spend doing the financials, that's the problem.
We have a good
You
staff
have-
right now.
Most people are
When
minutes
you
on right
overstress your
She's
staff.
still catching up from what wasn't done
now.
before.
They're not here.
No,
They're not here for stuff. They're here for the job. They're not here for the money.
Especially when we have $3,000.
Please, that hurt my ear.
Let's stick on one subject at a time. Let's have one person talk at a time. Okay?
Meredith, I'm sorry that I raised my voice, and I know it's not appropriate.
I apologize.
This is frustrating for me because I know the first 2 months of last year's budget, I think we went over more than our surplus is this year. And I think that it is our job not only to have a vision for the town, but responsibly execute that vision, okay? This is not a budget that is going to, we need more cushion. We need more cushion.
Yeah.
$16,000 is a good cushion to have.
No, 4,000.
We hired additional staff.
No, but because of when things come in and when it goes out,
But what if
we're
it
always.
in and out, no? And then I would rather have a safety net, and I don't see how.
Typically, budgets don't have safety nets built in them.
You should save up for the
I
Trump
think
system.
Sue Bowling, I wish she was here because. I
Our
think
safety
she-
net is all of our, other
Reserve
accounts, our reserves.
$1,000,000.
Yeah, I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's our safety net.
And if
You
you
don't make a safety net in a budget. A budget is meant to be balanced. How much is coming in is what goes out. You don't say having $50,000 left over is a balanced budget. That's not a balanced budget. A balanced budget.
Yeah, I think it's good to have that.
But that's not actually the way budgets.
But that's
Well, then
not
it would be a
all.
non-cycle.
Responsible is not taking our funds out of our other accounts and trying to pad our.
That's what I'm worried about.
That's irresponsible.
That's what I'm worried about, because we're gonna have to pad this budget if we don't have the income going. And we're very close to being not balanced. It just takes one maintenance repair we didn't see coming. One, high electric bill, 3 high electric bills, and we're not balanced.
It'll have to come from reserve. Listen, I think at the end of the day, we're probably not gonna come to agreement with That's why we all have, I think, all points are valid. At the end of the day, we all have a vote. And so I would just say that we need to table this until a vote, and everybody votes with their conscience on this one.
I just want to point out, there's a lot of zeros here that we haven't even, last year was 2,000 for this, 0. Last year, 9,000, 0. Last year, 7,000, 0.
You need to tell us what you're.
Okay, I'm looking at, okay, this is just really, just.
My salary.
Street signs, street signs, which were, 2,000. Van Cleek was 2,000. The nature 9,000, and the farmer's market was 7,000. Farmer's market really needs some work. I mean, it's horrendous. I mean, we gotta save that thing. It's,
But the farmer's market, but what you're talking about is in a separate area.
no, I'm just talking about all the zeros that are here.
Okay, but like if we did street signs last year, we might not need their street signs again.
We need, street signs.
But this is why we talked about the need for revenue. We need
Yeah,
to focus
right.
on getting more money.
Well, next year at this time, we can look at it, but.
Well, listen, Bill, I brought it up in October and nobody moved on it. So here we are.
It's too early.
Too early,
Yeah, next year we can do that. Once we.
too early in
now that-
the fall and too early to
Well, we
plan
had,
for the following
we had a
year.
crazy budget last year, COVID and DMV and all that. This year, we're gonna have a normal budget.
One of the things, first of all, I would thank my fellow councilors for spirited debate. But one thing, so going back to last week, I asked the staff, as we looked at it, and I would come back to the staff, and obviously you have staff over there. You have staff over there.
Guys,
Dan. It's okay. There's kind of a split at the moment, and so you might say, group of 3 over here favors the 16, a group of 3 over here doesn't favor the 16. So what I was going to ask you to do as a staff would be to maybe review those numbers one more time as we gather and talk and see if there any, would you hold to the 16? Would you drop the 16 as their middle number? I'm not asking you to do that right now. I'm just asking you to take, it's clear we have a difference of opinion. And as we vote on it, it'd be good to know, as you look at it one more time, I'm interested in trying to make sure that we give you the tools you need to do your job. I mean, you might come back, like I have a situation, for example, in my job right now, I have a teacher that I have to talk to tomorrow, and I don't know if I have any room to do with him. I have price I have to offer him. You might come back and say, the only way we can do this is if we really need the 16. So I'm kind of asking y'all, double check your numbers and let us know. Just know there's a diversity, strong difference of opinion. And again, my point to you is, I'd rather have us all agree to something, but at the same time, I really want you to have the tools you need to do your job. And if you think it's the 16, then I will support that. Or if you hear there's 3 counselors who don't think that's a good idea, maybe there's a better answer that we haven't thought of yet. So if you think of that, I would take both of those fully into consideration as you think about it.
Yeah, I could come back, look at it a second time and then write something up for council.
And it might be helpful, Javier, to just have a list of things that you would hope that this person would do for the town. Of where that person on a part-time basis could provide benefit. Either in, normal administrative functions, or even in like covering hours and, things like that.
I mean, if we have a budget that's an $800,000 budget, and in a sense, we're down to a debate about 16,000, we're getting there. We just have to figure if we're getting close to figuring out, sorry, council, that's something.
I can't see anything in the budget about the interim program,
Sorry.
intern program.
Yes, it's that temp line.
They have it. Let me get that up.
So payroll temp,
And good, just give me the figure,
2,000.
2,000.
Yeah, so
And we exceeded, we actually exceeded that with Lincoln, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we approved that.
we approved it, but we exceeded
Yeah.
2,000. You know, that's $2,000. I know Lincoln made some contributions and worked hard. And I know it's hard for people to get experience in, you know, the government sector. However, I think UVA or any other school wants to educate their own students. And if it's not up to us, if now UVA wants to pay us 2,000 to take on the interns, I'd be in favor of that. But I don't, you know, if you want to cut something, let's cut right there. You know, that's $2,000. Well, that's the problem.
I mean, I feel like Wyndham was super important because because of the conflict.
But we also.
But next-
Got out of a meeting with Charlie, who said essentially the compliment is not what he's used to also.
And no,
So,
he never did one before. That was a mistake. We should have had a timeline with it too. That's a mistake. We should have said, we want to buy this one.
So I feel like having a temp last year who was an intern was important because of the comp plan, but I would be willing to say, maybe we don't need one this year, and I'm agreeing with you guys. Let me get it out of my mouth before we start poo-pooing.
It's just.
I feel like I need to be done with this meeting because some of us have had a lot of them and it's the same thing.
We gotta get this done in time.
I know, and we thought that when only 2 or 3 of us showed up, and then we thought that another one, a bunch of us didn't show up.
Oh.
For one of us. Oh, you were in service for both?
For both of them,
Well,
All right, that's not.
Well,
I'll be glad.
I will agree with you guys, maybe $2,000 could be saved on the intern this year. I'd rather see it an intern go than, you know.
Let's think about it and then, we should say about that next week in council meeting.
One other thing I like to add in there too, I like to get more money for the website. It's such an important thing, maybe training. is something for the website.
I would say they need to look at website traffic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
You too.
Did we,
Oh, Mayor Lee,
things on this one?
Let's have my name on it. Oh, that's not even a website, that's right.
Fine.